Hey everyone, Z-Slayer Dre here, and today I'll be reviewing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, developed by Ubisoft. I really thought Assassin's Creed Origin was a great start, and outside the horrible microtransactions in it, I thought the series had been reborn and had incredible potential for future installments. Then we got Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I'm not sure what happened, but I think the less we talk about Odyssey, the better. So that brings us to Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is a setting fans have been begging for years now. So let's see how Ubisoft, who, let me remind you, just released Ghost Recon Breakpoint and Watch Dogs Legion, did with Valhalla. The game is split up in a few different zones, but you start off in Norway, which basically serves as your tutorial hub for when you go to England and other regions. You're orphaned, it's a Ubisoft game, so, of course you are. And you go to live with another Jarl who takes you in as his son. Your adoptive father eventually submits to a new king who is uniting Norway, but you and your adoptive brother Sigurd do not agree, so you take to the sea with your village and set off to settle in England. Before the story started, Sigurd had been raiding and brought back with him two assassins. They aren't called assassins, but for simplicity's sake, let's just call them assassins because they're assassins. They give you, Igar, a hidden blade because reasons, and you essentially become an assassin even though you're not really one, and the vast majority of the story has little to nothing to do with assassins in an Assassin's Creed game. The game proper starts off once you reach England and you start building up your town. This calls back to earlier Assassin's Creed games, although it's very simplistic. Basically, most functions that were done through the menu, like customizations, are now done through buildings in the town, like the stables or the docks for your horse and ship. You can also get some other buildings that will provide a buff or get tattoos or change your hairstyle, so there is some variety, although you end up spending very little time in the town, and it quickly becomes an afterthought as little effort was put into making it a fun gameplay mechanic. Like in Odyssey, you're able to choose your gender again, though you'll have the same name either way, but this time around you get a third option that lets the Animus change your gender throughout the story for really thin plot reasons. Honestly, I have no idea why they made two characters again. It only hurts the story. Just make one amazing character and have them be the star, or let you play as multiple characters like in Syndicate. That worked quite well. I went with the male Ivor, and the voice acting is among some of the best in Assassin's Creed franchise history. Magnus Brunn, who most people will know as Knut from The Last Kingdom on Netflix, did a phenomenal job. Honestly, the story started off promising and halfway through it just descended into chaos, and even through some horribly written sections, Magnus delivered a stellar performance and really lifted up the story even when absolutely nothing was there, and I can't praise him enough for the effort. That being said, overall the voice cast is generally very good. There were really only a few side characters that were poorly done, although they stuck out like a sore thumb since the rest of the voice acting was so great. While there is an overarching plot, the story primarily is told of mini arcs. In past games, you would go region to region liberating them, and you do the same in this time around, but in Valhalla, the region liberating this time you do through building alliances to strengthen your clan. While they call it something different, it is functionally the same thing, just with more story in between. You'll get a ton of characters thrown at you constantly, some of whom you will act like best of friends with, even though you've only known them for like 30 seconds. Honestly, none of the mini arcs are worth mentioning. The writing, again, is pretty forgettable, and it just serves as a thin veil for the constant button mashing that is the combat. While I really did not enjoy Odyssey, the one thing in it that was acceptable was the combat, and for some reason they decided to change the feel of it, and it just feels terrible. It's hard to describe, but it's one of those things where the second you start playing, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. There's really just no weight behind the weapons, and everything feels floaty. They added in a stamina bar, which bogs down the combat even further, and the attack animations constantly glitch out. You can travel around on your longship, although you don't do combat on it like in previous games, and you do raids on towns and monasteries, which were fun the first few times, but they quickly got old. You also do castle sieges, which are basically the same thing as the raids and all follow a very similar script, so they all kind of just feel the same. The AI is almost completely broken. There is so much more they could have done with the sieges and raids, but unfortunately it just ends up falling short. There are so many other gameplay mechanics in the game, but we would be here all day if I went over all of them in detail. They really did throw everything at this game, including the kitchen sink, hoping something would stick. The problem is that so many of the mechanics are poorly developed, offering little depth or enjoyment. There's everything from fishing to crafting to minigames and a billion collectibles. Some of the minigames are actually quite fun. For instance, I did enjoy the fighting, which is basically a poem duel, and winning them will increase your charisma, which will give you additional dialogue options. Although, really, those don't really end up mattering. I kind of went back and tested out different dialogue options, and Most of the time, it made little to no difference in the story. It's really just a few handful of options that really will make a major difference. Most of the time, you choose to spare someone, and let them live. They'll just end up dying later anyways. So I don't know why there's even it's the illusion of choice basically. The crafting system is a little different, but very similar to Odyssey. You can upgrade the quality to different tiers, and within those tiers are different levels you can upgrade your gear to. You have to go back to the blacksmith to upgrade to the different tiers, although while you're in the field, you can upgrade the different levels in those tiers. It requires an astronomical amount of materials to upgrade to the highest levels. Even exploring and finding treasure chests at every location I went to during the story and exploring other areas that I did not need to go to, I still found myself having to use all my silver to buy resources to upgrade my gear. And unfortunately, the only two real main ones that you can buy are leather and iron, and those are on like a cooldown timer that's shared between all of the vendors. So you can only really buy them once in a while. So, I mean, it does help, and I would recommend if you do buy the game, just buy all the iron and leather you can find because you will be using it. They really did design the crafting from the ground up to sell microtransactions. It's meant to frustrate players and not to be a fun or interesting gameplay mechanic. And you better like that weapon that you choose to upgrade, or else you'll be grinding for quite some time to level up another weapon or armor set. You really are limited to really only being able to do one armor set and maybe one or two weapons, and that's really it. Unless you want to 100% of the game, basically. There's just so much bloat to this game. Everything just pointlessly extends out the gameplay, and very little is enjoyable or well designed. All gear and treasure are hidden behind, well, I can't really call them puzzles, but I would call them hindrances. This got absolutely obnoxious even early on, since everything required a key or a secret entrance or blowing something up, or a key to get it to a key to get to another key in order to get to a chest that's actually behind a wall that you have to blow up. Sometimes you have to move a bureau, and then behind the bureau is a wall you need to blow up in the chest there. Why not just move the bureau? I mean, it was just so poorly designed. Even though it wasn't difficult, it just slowed down the gameplay immensely and was very unsatisfying. There were even a few times where I ran around trying to find a way to get to a treasure chest, wasting time only to find out later that the chest was inaccessible until I did a certain quest later on. This is just bad game design at its worst. I can't imagine how anyone thought this was a good idea. The bosses throughout the game and the endgame ones are also quite disappointing. You can stealth kill a few of them, but most of them you cannot stealth kill. So people who want to play as assassins, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to. Not a single one had any fun mechanics, and quite a few of them actually glitched out on me. I had to reload my fight against one legendary animal 3 times before I could get the fight to work properly, and even then it didn't really work properly when I did finally beat it. They also placed high-level bosses in low-level zones for some inexplicable reason. I've seen quite a few people online be frustrated by this poorly thought-out mechanic, rightfully so, and there's really no reason for it. Also, once you get to a higher power level, the enemies start becoming worse and worse HP sponges, and it starts feeling even worse than Odyssey at times. Even doing a lot of side content, I still find myself constantly being lower than the recommended level for zones. Although I could make it through them still, it just made the combat that much more tedious. I've mentioned bugs and glitches a few times already, and before we go any further, I have to say, this game is utterly broken. I can't think of a single gameplay mechanic that didn't glitch out at some point while playing. The game clearly wasn't ready for release, and Ubisoft rushed it out just to be on the new consoles. It's a shame because some parts of the game did show promise, but it's not enjoyable when nothing works consistently. And it did get worse the later I got into the game. At first it was mostly graphical and animation glitches, but as I got further down the main quest line, it started constantly glitching. Luckily, either reloading the save or restarting the game fixed the problem most of the time, but I started getting paranoid I would lose all my progress, so I started saving before every mission. I've seen quite a few reports of people online saying they actually can't progress the main story because it's glitched out, and I really feel bad for those people who are going to have to wait for a patch before they can play this game that they potentially spend $120 on. There's a lot more I could go over, but it's just not worth it. This game is bloated to the brim with useless crap, a poorly written story, unsatisfying combat, and a disgusting amount of microtransactions. I mean, seriously, they did remove the XP booster, but everything else from Odyssey is still there. It means $20 for a friggin' armor set with some skins that you'll never use. Everything is so expensive, and those armor sets are better than anything you'll find. They'll be almost fully upgraded, and you don't have to waste all the resources or run around finding resources to upgrade them as much. Or they have the resources for sale in the microtransaction store. I mean, like I said, the game was designed to annoy you to buy microtransactions. It really sucks. They actually managed somehow to make playing as a Viking raider boring, which I guess in itself is kind of a feat. The game is absolutely not worth playing in its current state, or even if they fix it. If you're really curious, I would wait for a very deep sale if you do ever buy it. That being said, people who absolutely loved Odyssey and played it for hundreds upon hundreds of hours and are desperate for more Odyssey might get some enjoyment out of Valhalla. I'm going to give Assassin's Creed Valhalla a 5.8 out of 10, but the rating is almost pointless since this game just isn't worth playing. It's not as bad as I thought it would be, but it's still not a good game. I honestly can't believe I wasted my time playing through this game. The franchise needs to lay dormant for 4 to 5 years so the developers can really figure out what's wrong, fix it, and finally put out a quality product. But they won't follow my advice. They'll release another broken mess of a game in a year or two like clockwork. I'm sure over the next 2 years they'll fix Valhalla, and they've already said they're fleshing out some mechanics in later patches like the rating, which makes you wonder why they couldn't have put them in at release. This is just another example as to why you should not buy games at launch. People who wait 2 years to buy this game will have a measurably better experience while paying a fraction of the price. That being said, the game is so broken, I don't see it ever being completely stable, and even if they removed every bug and glitch, the quality of the content just isn't there to make it worth playing. I'm just glad the Ubisoft releases are out of the way for a while, and now I have Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity, Cyberpunk 2077, and Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War to look forward to, so finally, there's some hope at least that this year and video games won't be a complete bust. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll have better games to report on next time I do a review. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like and be sure to subscribe to see reviews as soon as they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.